Fantastic. My name is Maddie Forbes and I've been organising the 2020 Think Tank Working Group for the students and young professionals in public health. I would like to start by acknowledging that I'm hosting this webinar from the lands of the Turrbal and Yugara people, and that we are joined today by people in all parts of the country. We acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands we work and meet, and pay our respects to the elders past, present and emerging, and acknowledge the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander audience members attending today. It gives me great pleasure to welcome you all to our third annual National Public Health Think Tank competition. Thank you for joining us, whether you're an entrant, a judge or an audience member. It's great to have you here and supporting the activities of the Students and Young Professionals in Public Health Committee. During this webinar, feel free to add any questions you may have in the Q&A chat of the Zoom function. Unfortunately, we won't have time to address these, but we will forward these comments and questions onto each participant after the webinar. This competition is an initiative of the Students and Young Professionals in Public Health. You'll hear a bit more about this committee later on, but for now, I'm going to give you a quick rundown of our competition. This competition launched in 2018, and we hoped it would be a way to engage the student audience with this field and give them a chance for exposure and capture their energy and innovation. This year, students entered by providing a written response to the prompt, "What do you see as a major public health impact as a consequence of bushfire, climate and/or coronavirus? And what public health action do you recommend be taken in response?" We received 26 entries in total, and these were reviewed according to a predefined set of criteria, including demonstrated understanding of public health principles and quality of critical thinking. Our top 4 shortlisted entrants from this written round were invited to develop their response into the presentations. And these presentations we are hearing today, and they can be no more than 7 minutes. Croaky Media has also selected 4 entries to publish, so keep an eye out in the coming weeks as these are released. Our winning entrant today will go on to present their response at the upcoming National Public Health Conference as a keynote session. Our winner will receive free registration to this conference, and all 4 of our shortlisted entrants who present today will receive a 1-year student membership to Public Health Association and to Croaky Media. We thank the Public Health Association that we're able to offer this opportunity, and we thank them for not only the support of the Think Tank competition, but for their dedication in supporting students and young professionals in public health. I would like to give a special welcome and thanks to our judging panel for today. We are very pleased to have such high-level expertise on the panel, which is made up of Summer May Finlay, Vice President of the PHAA Board, representing Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders, Brian Majadi, who is a PHAA Diversity, Equity and Inclusion Special Interest Group Convener, and Terry Slevin, the CEO of the Public Health Association. Thank you all for your time this evening. Now, we might launch into our entrants. Each entrant will have no more than 7 minutes to present, so we will be keeping an eye on the time. After that, there will be an opportunity for the judges to ask 1 or 2 questions before we move on. I would now like to introduce our first entrant, Tasia Oswald. Tasia is a PhD candidate in the School of Public Health at the University of Adelaide. She focuses on the prevention of mental illness and the promotion of mental well-being. She'll be presenting on the topic Ecological Issues and Youth Mental Health, the era of climate change, bushfires and COVID-19. Thanks, Tasia, when you're ready.
Hi everybody, before I begin my presentation today, I'd like to acknowledge that I'm presenting on Kaurna land today. I pay my respects to the traditional owners who have deep connection to country here. My name is Tasia Oswald and today I'll be presenting on ecological issues and youth mental health in the era of climate change, bushfires and COVID-19. So back in 2019, young Australians were asked, what concerns you the most? 2 of their top answers were the environment and climate change, as well as mental health. And these concerns aren't mutually exclusive. Experiences of distress around the state of the environment have led to experiences of eco-anxiety and eco-grief for young Australians. Climate change, bushfires, and COVID-19 all have human-induced ecological issues at their core. Rising global temperatures following the Industrial Revolution have led to greater frequency and extremity of natural disasters like bushfires. These natural disasters can displace wildlife and increase their proximity to other animal and human populations. This ultimately increases our risk of exposure to novel zoonotic viruses like COVID-19. So the events of 2020 all have human-induced ecological issues at their core, and they've caused significant global disruption, but they also reflect the environmental concerns young people have been voicing for some time now. And they ultimately exacerbate mental health issues, which they already reported to be at a crisis point. So a major public health impact of these events is youth mental health issues. Kids Helpline reported a 15% spike in calls during the bushfires and a 40% surge during COVID-19. These events are extremely distressing for young people because they know that they have to bear the long-term social, ecological, and economic consequences, and at the same time, they have very limited direct influence over decisions made or actions taken in response. Currently, clinical psychology is the dominant discipline which is dealing with mental health issues. And while it's extremely important and valuable, it's not the optimal solution. This is because experiences of mental illness while young can lead to an increased risk of poor mental health in adulthood. So we desperately need a shift from treating mental illness once it's developed to preventing it in the first place. And this presents a tremendous opportunity for the field of public health. We need a socio-ecological model which considers upstream determinants of youth mental health, like climate change. So the Ottawa Charter for Health Promotion highlights these inextricable links between human health and the environment. And while an ecological approach might seem a bit novel in psychology or medicine, this concept is not new to Aboriginal Australians, for whom social and emotional well-being is deeply rooted in connection to country and caring for the land. I'm now going to talk about an ecological public health strategy called Green Views for Teen Blues, which could be used in response to the issues I've just discussed. This campaign involves two strategies. So the first strategy of the Green Views for Teen Blues campaign is to invest in high quality urban green spaces and infrastructure. Why should we do this? Well, by 2061, 74% of Australians will be living in a major city. So we'll need to shift towards higher density living to accommodate for this, which means more families will miss out on having access to nature in their own backyard. This is linked with increased noise and air pollution, and island heat effects may get worse. These are all linked with climate change and psychological distress. During COVID, we've really learned about the importance of having amenities close to home which support good mental health, and this should include nature. This is especially important for young people from low socioeconomic areas because currently urban green spaces aren't distributed equitably across Australia. How could we do this? Well, we need to shift towards biophilic urban design. So this includes having green roofs and vertical gardens where we've already got buildings, having green corridors through cities and more parks and community gardens. In addition, governments should consider introducing minimum green quotas on new developments. So current regulations say that if you have a new development, a certain percentage has to be open space, but it doesn't consider that this open space may be concrete. So we need to think about the naturalness of it. Governments may also want to set and try and achieve biodiversity targets in local council areas. And the reason for this is research has shown that biodiverse areas are linked with better mental well-being than plain grassed areas, for example. In doing all of this, we also need to manage gentrification. That's because green suburbs are more expensive to live in because people like to be surrounded by greenery. If we introduce greenery into lower socioeconomic suburbs, we need to make sure low-income families aren't pushed out because they can't afford to stay. So who would be involved in this? Well, Aboriginal leadership would be really important as the traditional owners of this land and to make sure we respect cultural sacred sites. Many government departments would need to be involved. We'd need to smash the silos to get health into all policies and achieve strong collaboration across sectors. Importantly, young people should also be involved in the co-design of urban spaces to make sure they'd actually want to use them. Some of the outcomes of this strategy is we may see reduced heat, air and noise pollution and mitigation of extreme weather events like floods. This may lead to better quality of living and increased opportunity for physical activity and social connection for young people, all of which is really important for mental health. So now that we may have achieved increased access to nature, we need to promote the mental health benefits of connecting with nature. And this is the second strategy of the Green Views for Team Blues campaign. So why do we need to do this? Well, despite young people's concerns for the environment, their engagement with nature is really low. So for some people, they spend more time in daily screen time than in weekly green time. There's also fears for parents around social and cultural fears around safety of letting people wander in green spaces. Psychologists argue that there are benefits of connecting with nature, so we should capitalise on this. How could it be done? Social media campaigns. Young people love social media. Use evidence-based information and memorable messaging, like the example on the screen. We'd need health departments to fund it and a range of experts to collaborate to make sure it's done right. Some outcomes may include increased health literacy, use of nature, and hopefully ongoing investment in protecting nature for future generations. So, solutions to ecological issues and youth mental health issues are symbiotic. Our health depends on the health of the planet, so it's time we started acting like it. Thank you very much.
Great, thanks Tazia, and we'll now turn to our judges for their questions.
Tazia, that was great. I'm Terry. Lovely to meet you, albeit it's over the screen, but that's how we're all meeting these days. The challenge for you, Tazia, it's a great presentation. Congratulations and thank you. But when it came to your slides about the who, what and the why, and then the outcome, for me, there was a piece missing. And the question I ask you is, what are the things that you need to do to get that combination of ingredients together? What are the key policy changes? What are the key changes that you see are likely to reach your outcome? And what do you think might be some of the barriers to those changes that you want to draw upon to achieve the outcomes that you're pursuing?
Of course, I mean, a lot of policy steps would need to be taken for something like increasing greenery in urban cities. There are some cities that are doing it across the world. I mean, Singapore is a really green place, and in Europe, they're trying to increase greenery to a minimum of 9 meters square per citizen. So it's shifting, it's moving, but it hasn't happened here yet. And perhaps that's because we do have a smaller population and more space. But as I mentioned, over time, more of that population will be in urban areas. So if we start planning now, it's really important so that for the future, by the time we're all city bound, we do have nature around us. As for the policy steps to make that happen, one of them I mentioned was looking at minimum green quotas on new developments. It's an interesting prospect, saying, okay, having open space like a concreted backyard isn't good enough because of heat, for example. There needs to be council checks that there's a certain amount of greenery. So that's an example of one policy step that could be taken. Some barriers to that: people don't like being told what to do. That's my home, you can't tell me what to do, but we've seen that in the past with public health, wearing seatbelts and things for safety. I think, the way the environment's treated and the way the environment is around us will become such a big public health problem in the future that, those steps may be necessary.
Great, thank you.
Great, thanks Tazia and Terry. We will now move on to our second entrant, Christina Rogers. Christina is coming to us from Macquarie University, where she is currently studying a Master of Public Health. She will be presenting her response titled Food Insecurity in Rural and Remote Indigenous Australian Populations as a Result of Climate Change. Thanks, Christina, when you're ready.
Thank you. Okay, so I'll be presenting the Indigenous equals Australian Health Promotion Program, but just before I begin, I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we gather today and pay my respects to their elders, past and present. I extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples here today. So we're looking at Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander health, particularly in a rural setting, and looking particularly at how we can combat food insecurity, climate change, and cultural engagement, and looking at how each of these determinants also interact with one another. Pre-European invasion, Indigenous diets consisted of a wide variety of native fruit, flowers, gums, seeds, legumes, and nuts, high in nutrients and antioxidants, and that promoted digestion and anti-inflammation. Even in terms of preparation and cooking methods, it was aimed at retaining the nutritional efficacy of the food as much as possible, which had deteriorated post-European invasion and had caused a lot of social, economic, and environmental implications, particularly loss of connection to culture and country. So Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Health Survey indicated more than 30% of Indigenous Australians experience food insecurity at least once over a 12-month period. And this is focusing just on rural communities, not taking into consideration urban populations either. And climate change is definitely something that affects everybody. For example, poor nutrition, soil nutrients being depleted due to overcultivation. Severe weather and droughts can also cause food spoilage and therefore food insecurity. Rising CO2 changes and increases the distribution of plant pests and therefore the use of insecticides. And by implementing this program, we will increase greener spaces, reduce food miles and food waste, as well as reducing the CO2 levels associated with production and transportation, limited exposure to insecticides, and more plant-based diets as opposed to processed diets. So culture, health, and environment are all very much inextricably linked regarding Indigenous culture. Dennis Foley stated, "The land is the mother and we are of the land. We do not own the land rather than the land owns us. The land is our food, our culture, our spirit, and our identity." I think this is really useful also in terms of addressing climate change, because Western perspectives look at the environment more as a resource and a way that we can cultivate, a way that something that we can take from, not really something that we can contribute to. So in adopting this Indigenous Australian ideology and knowledge surrounding how to care for country, we can address the issue of food insecurity and climate change. And this also fosters a sense of culture, of mutual respect, community gain, and shared knowledge, and reciprocity between relationships of Indigenous and non-Indigenous Australians. Also in terms of working in conjunction with Western science as part of an integrated healthcare system, I think that that's really important, particularly at the moment. We're not wanting to impose or impart knowledge on Indigenous Australians. We're looking more at participation and solidarity and empowerment of Indigenous Australians to enable them to be agents of their own health and in charge of the trajectory of their own health. So in terms of the program itself, implementation of a community centre and garden consisting of native Australian flora, as well as incorporation of Indigenous Australian methods of propagation, cultivation, caring for country, cooking, and food preparation. Using a co-design approach, this is also fostering a sense of solidarity and empowerment, which is really important because we're not wanting to address communities with, the answer for everything kind of thing. We really want people to not only get as much out of the program, but also contribute just as much to the program and contribute their knowledge. So addressing health principles such as solidarity, participation, empowerment, and equity, as well as rights, respect, and recognition. And this is also addressing the right to health, which is particularly influential in rural areas. So addressing availability, accessibility, acceptability, and quality of produce. And we'll use this through the social cognitive theory, so looking at behavioural change through self-efficacy, so improving connection to culture and country as a means of incentive. And also the socio-ecological model, so individual relationships, community, and society. I think the benefits for the individual are quite obvious: increased nutrition, increased food security, but also on a community and societal level, we will also be looking at empowering Indigenous communities and fostering culture, as well as addressing climate change, and hopefully also eventually impacting and advocating for public health policy reform. So in terms of implementation, it is quite evident that legislation differences do exist between states in terms of Indigenous land rights. And so that's something that will have to be considered beyond the development stage. So the program is innovative for a number of reasons, but in particular, I'm going to focus on food prep and cooking methods. Food is something everybody enjoys. We all love eating. Regardless of which culture you come from, food and cooking is a big part of culture. And I think that's really solidifying that sense of reciprocity between Indigenous and non-Indigenous Australians, and also targeted at reducing that health gap and the gap in knowledge that currently exists. And I think that's really important, not only to benefit Indigenous communities living rurally, but also benefit the greater Australian population. So using SMART objectives as specific, measurable, attainable, and relevant, just in the interest of time, I will focus on the timely aspect. It is aimed at implementation over a 1-year period, and the reason for that is liaising with the community takes time, and building trust and relationships take time. And we want people to feel comfortable and feel as if they can engage in their own health. Also, we're accounting for change in seasons and the impacts on plant growth, as well as utilising Indigenous knowledge surrounding the change of seasons and the flora that comes with that. A program logic model elucidates, so a Gantt chart creation, which I'll show you in a minute, and also staff development, surveying the land for soil acidity and feasibility, mobilising the community, budget formulation, also sort of advertising this throughout the community and speaking to many members of the community, and also looking at the feasibility beyond the community. This is just a mock-up Gantt chart that I have made just to show you the short-term and the long-term goals and the longevity of the program. And overall, it is aimed at addressing climate change, reduced food insecurity, and increasing Indigenous culture amongst society. But there are also byproducts of this, so fostering connection to country, fostering social cohesion, increased employment rates, and utilising Indigenous perspectives. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Christina. Do our judges have any questions?
Can I just ask, Christina, thank you for your presentation. I'm a foodie, so anything about food is always interesting for me.
Yeah.
My question to you is, who or what are the features that you have in your mind about who should be leading this this project? Like what kind of features or expertise or backgrounds should be should the leaders of this project have?
Mm-hmm. Yep. So I think approaching it from an empirical perspective, but really liaising with the community. So that will be contingent on the particular community. Some communities might be accepting of maybe certain approaches, some might not be interested, some might not feel as if certain activities are really feasible. It really depends. But I think the main aspects of it are employing Indigenous cultivation methods, preparation methods, and cooking methods. And this can only be done by learning from Indigenous people. So again, we're really wanting to empower Indigenous people to have that engagement in their culture. Obviously, we're needing Indigenous elders within the community to disseminate this knowledge, but even for younger members of the community to participate and learn maybe from things that they hadn't learned from their parents, or maybe their parents had become disconnected from.
Can I ask a question as well on this, Christina? Thank you for that. And Bram, you answered one of the two questions, well, you asked one of the two questions I'd wanted to ask, so that was great. Can I just ask, so in terms of this project, when I think about this and we're talking about sharing culture, how do you ensure that that cultural appropriation doesn't occur and that the IP of this knowledge is maintained within the Aboriginal community?
Yep. So I think, again, by liaising with the community, it's not a one-size-fits-all approach to health. We really want to find out what it is that the community wants to gain and also contribute. So I think also geographically as well, it's not feasible to grow certain produce everywhere all over Australia. So the types of preparation, the types of produce that's grown is definitely going to be contingent on location and also community. In terms of appropriation, we're definitely not wanting to appropriate, say, a community from the Northern Territory down here in New South Wales. But I think sharing and having that knowledge disseminated around Australia, I think is really useful, because I know that even growing up and attending school here, we really didn't learn that much, and I wish that we did, because I think it's quite sad that you grow up in a country and you don't even know that much about the people that have looked after it for so long. Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, Christina, and our judges. We will now hear from our third entrant, Jessica Graham. Jessica is a registered nurse working on the paediatric ward in Armidale Rural Referral Hospitals and is currently studying her Masters in Public Health with James Cook University. Jessica will be discussing her Friendly Hands project idea, aimed to address the current needs of vulnerable communities in northwestern New South Wales. Thanks, Jess. You can start when you're ready.
Hi guys, here we go. Perfect. Before I start, I'd just like to acknowledge the Anawan people, who are the traditional people of this land, and all their traditions, past and present. I'm Jess, and I'd like to introduce to you Friendly Hands. It's a project proposal that has been developed in response to the decline of mental health and emotional well-being in the New England region as a result of drought, fires, and the COVID-19 pandemic. Friendly Hands aims to assist in the recovery and healing of the region through supporting the revival of agricultural industries, breaking down mental health barriers, diversifying the skills of community members, and ensuring resilience be fostered within the community through close social interactions. Oh, sorry guys, I'm just having trouble with my, there we go. The New England region spans across the large portion of rural New South Wales, and as you can see, it relies heavily on agriculture and its stability, growth, and strength. So communities in the New England region have faced immeasurable emotional trauma as they experience the compounding impacts of climate change, severe drought, blazing fires, and the COVID-19 pandemic. 100% of the region has been impacted by drought, with many livelihoods affected through lack of access to water, poor food security, and loss of land productivity. Many of them watched their homes and hectares of working land burn during Australia's Black Summer bushfires. These fires have caused massive devastation in the region, causing significant reduction in ecological condition, biodiversity, and productivity of agricultural land. Once the fires were out, farmers clutched to hope of rainfall returning to the region. However, with the emergence of COVID-19, there's been a widespread loss of employment, social isolation, dislocation, and crippling health views across the region. All three recent natural disasters have had a profound and lasting social and economic impact to these rural communities. There's been an increased burden of psychological distress, morbidity, and suicidal ideation amongst Australian communities as a result of recent natural disasters. Mental health is a significantly important aspect to disaster management that requires a comprehensive and holistic public health response. Rural community and interconnectedness is central to the concept of recovery for farming families. In rural and remote regions, stigma and shame is often attached to mental health. Therefore, it's pivotal that a program address mental health in farming communities that targets social and emotional well-being in an innovative and culturally appropriate way using inclusive language. Friendly Hands is a community initiative that hopes to mitigate potential mental health risk vulnerabilities by creating an environment of support, connection, interconnectedness, and resilience. Empowering the entire community and strengthening bonds between its members is crucial to the impacts, minimizing the impacts of natural disasters. The purpose of the program is to provide a volunteering service to communities in the New England that addresses mental health in a comprehensive and holistic approach. Through creating a social platform, Friendly Hands will assist the New England in its disaster recovery process through supporting the revival of agricultural industries and breaking down mental health barriers, as well as diversifying the skills of community members. So as you can see, the key components of this program is the development of a website and an app. The concept of Friendly Hands was inspired by all things Tinder, where both farmers and volunteers create a profile with some information about themselves, which include where they live, skills they may have, and the hours that they're able to work. Farmers then have the opportunity to pick and choose their perfect match to get urgent jobs done around their property. Volunteers can then respond to the match and a line of communication is opened. As you can see in the mock-up of the app, a range of services are offered to farmers, including just chatting for an hour over a cup of tea, or assisting farmers with the piles of administrative work that is required to get any sort of grant or funding from government. Literally anyone with any skills can help these farmers in trying to recover from the natural disasters that have occurred. I want to highlight though that this program not only aims to address the practical needs of farmers, but to also create opportunities for all community members. Many people in the region have lost their jobs recently and are finding it difficult to find any form of employment. This program provides the option to farmers to then offer their expertise and provide training opportunities to those seeking new skills. Through this multifaceted volunteer program, skills can be shared and practical support provided to farmers, as well as reduce mental health risks within these vulnerable communities. So these are the following stakeholders within the community who would have some sort of interest in Friendly Hands being developed. By knowing who my stakeholders are, I've been able to actively engage, build trust, encourage innovation, and develop a more robust risk management plan and develop a program that meets the community's needs. I've also developed this SWOT analysis. Through this analysis, I've been able to identify some gaps in the program which will enable me to minimise risks and address barriers in the success of this program. I've also been able to identify chances for real success, such as networking, team building, and developing relationships between stakeholders in the region. Overcoming the barriers identified by the SWOT analysis can be difficult. However, I found that authentically communicating with stakeholders has enabled me to effectively find community-centred solutions. The key success factors are crucial elements required for Friendly Hands to be successful, to achieve its mission. Friendly Hands hopes that through achieving these key success factors, the project is able to create empowering conditions at a local level, enabling communities in the New England region to address the social and environmental determinants of their own mental health. Friendly Hands is a community-made innovation. It's something that I've been really passionate about because my own family are farmers. I'm a nurse, so I've seen the impact of COVID-19 and helped fight fires over the summer. So working with the community, we've come up with this idea together, and hopefully it will address some of the mental health sort of issues that we've seen come up recently within the last 3 years. Thank you.
Thanks, Jessica. Do our judges have any questions?
If no one else will jump in, I will. Jessica, thank you for that. And I'm reflecting on how challenging it is for you all to present such big ideas in such a short space of time. So thank you for that. I guess my question to you, Jessica, is, I mean, this sounds like something you've invested a lot of time and thought and effort into, but what do you think might be the biggest challenges you have of turning this idea into a reality? What do you think the potential barriers might be on both sides of the fence? You've got, the farmers who might be seeking to take advantage of the program, sign up to join your rural Tinder site, and on the other side of the fence, those people who you think might be prepared to volunteer to lend a hand. Conceptually, there might be challenges on both sides to get people to join up. So what do you think those challenges might be, and how would you tackle them?
So definitely, I think distance is a massive one, and safety. So safety for farmers, for their land, for their stock, as well as safety for those going out into the farms and making sure that they're safe. I've sort of been coming up with ideas of making sure that when you kind of go onto the website, you need to register properly. So you have to have a police check. So then working with children's check as well. We obviously, to have a driver's license is important, to have your own transport there and back. But then also sort of communicating with farmers about, OH&S issues coming up, putting in policies and procedures. I think in one of my slides, I sort of talked about as well having an incident reporting system. which is the typical nurse in me. Got to have an incident report, so then we know when incidences do happen, how do we mitigate, you know, those problems which we may have missed, and as well maybe making sure there's like some sort of insurance as well for farmers, that they're covered and that the volunteers are covered as well. So that would be something that I'd definitely be looking into, and then I'd be also sort of talking to lawyers, community lawyers that I know who would be interested in trying to figure out how to make it the safest as possible in that regard.
That's great. Good on you. Thank you for that.
Thanks.
Do we have any other questions from our judges? No.
We have time for one more question.
Yeah.
It seems to me, Jessica, that, you know, like this idea, I mean, has a strong motivation of altruism for people wanting to help, right? Now, for those who may not be so altruistic, what kind of incentive do you think you could, this program could offer so that people are willing to help? For those who are not that altruistic, what do you think?
Well, I think sort of my approach was also to go out to community members who are recently unemployed. We've just, our university are letting 300 people go in the next few months, and we've also, our Big W's closed down in Armidale, as well as Target and a lot of local businesses. So I think sort of focusing on that, as in maybe talking with employment agencies, being like, look, like there isn't any work here at the moment, but to try and keep people, like to try and sort of increase people's stay to come in, we could create an incentive whereby volunteering those extra, like volunteering those hours, they then can get sort of credit points for their own employment opportunities later when they're applying for jobs. So I think that's another angle that I would go for, and they were the people that I would want to communicate with. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Jessica. Well done.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Jess. Now we might move on to our fourth and final entrant, Jennifer Brown. Jen is a PhD candidate at the University of Tasmania Faculty of Law, researching public health law and adaptation to climate change. She'll be presenting on why public health impacts of climate change require coordinated adaptation. Thanks, Jen.
Hello, thank you. Just share the right screen. Beautiful. So I'm just going to check. Can you see those slides? Everything's just completely frozen.
No, we can't see anything yet.
Sorry, I'll try again. Share screen. Screen one. It should be working. I don't know. Okay, sorry, can you see that now?
Yep, that's working now.
Okay, sorry, I'm really sorry about that. All right. So yes, my name is Jen and I'm from the Faculty of Law at the University of Tasmania, and perhaps my talk will be a little bit different today. But first, I'd just like to acknowledge the Muanina people of Lutruwita, Hobart, from where I speak to you today. And I acknowledge that European settlement continues to perpetuate an inequality that makes for some of the worst public health outcomes in the world. And as the climate changes, there is an unjustifiable threat to the world's oldest continuing culture. And the sad irony is that the deep connection to the land that Indigenous Australians have is the most important value required to help overcome climate change. And so I note that and I turn to the question of today. So we were asked to express what we think may be the most important impact arising from climate change, bushfire or COVID-19 and recommend a public health action. But through my public health research, it has really struck me that there is now no clear answer to this. The reality is that bushfire, COVID and climate change are all connected to the way we interact with the Earth's systems. Each issue will have a significant impact on public health. And I would argue that what we need is adaptation, coordinated governance with strong supporting laws that address public health principles. Now, conclusive evidence shows that due to the global warming that's already locked in, Australia's foreseeable future will have more intense extreme weather events, and they'll be happening concurrently. There'll also be a host of other creeping issues like air pollution, drought, changing infectious diseases, and all of these will cause problems for public health. With all this will come repetitive health system inundation and reduced access to services. Existing health problems in our community will cascade, increasing the burden on an already overstretched system. COVID-19 is demonstrating that public health governance in Australia is currently disjointed. It's siloed and super reactionary, moving from one issue to the next to try to manage one at a time. And each state and territory is doing things differently. But COVID-19 has also shown how good at adaptation Australians can be, just how quickly we can change. But if we don't back that up with continual coordinated support that involves community, things are going to fall apart and people are going to push back because they're not going to understand and they'll want a business as usual approach. We only have to look at COVID-19 to see that. We look at the responses to borders and masks and lockdowns, and we see businesses pushing and pushing to open back up. Public health governance is slowly losing support. But the complexity of decisions in the future are going to be even harder with strong competing interests. Such decisions are going to include who should be given priority treatment when health systems are inundated. Should we prioritise saving drinking water over using water for bushfires or agriculture? Should we conduct controlled burnings around cities when we know the impact of smoke and what it can do for health? And should we force communities or individuals to upgrade existing homes or even condemn some homes or whole communities because then they're not going to be fit to protect us against heat, bushfire, floods, smokes? So for this, we need governance to go beyond just government. We need to include community in governance so they can support the decisions that are made. We also need to work smarter with the public and private partners we have on the ground to deliver public health governance. So this is about bottom-up law and policy that promotes social connection and improved health outcomes. Some of those things you've seen, but we need law to implement them. So I'll come to this in a second, but I wanted to make an important point that the partners of public health have always been essential elements to public health governance, but they will become even more essential in the future because we will need business to understand public health so they protect their workers from bushfire smoke or excessive heat. We will need our private hospitals but we'll need to improve access to them, and we'll need them to be willing to be efficiently utilised in mass crisis events. So what can the law do to help this? I think first, a uniform act, much like the Victorian Climate Change Act, that formalises a requirement for climate change to become part of most government decisions is a good start. But I think we could also do something similar with public health. Guiding principles coupled with a requirement to consider public health as a part of most legislation and decision making, a sort of health in all legislation approach. Now, guiding principles exist in 3 of the 7 public health acts across Australia at the moment, and the decisions made under this legislation must be guided by these principles. And the principles include equity, proportionality, well-being, precaution and sustainability, and importantly, community participation. Imagine if this was extended across more legislation. Imagine if government decision-making included health as a central approach. This would truly be a health in all policies approach and would ensure recognition of the social determinants of health and community involvement. It would also improve recognition of the connection between human health and the environment through the sustainability principle. But I realised that all of this might be building castles in the sky. So we could simply start with creating a legislative requirement for adaptation. Currently only Victoria and the ACT have even a tiny bit of this. Because basically in the end, we can't keep engineering resilience into a system. We have to adapt to change and to increase resilience. A resilient health system should continue to operate through a crisis with equal and easy access to services, because this is what good public health is. Thank you.
Thanks, Jennifer. Do our judges have any questions?
Hi, Jennifer. Thanks for that. That was a really interesting presentation. So I just wanted to see if you could tease out a little bit more about how you would think that the community would become involved in the governance structures that you were talking about, so we could better understand the mechanisms.
Yeah, sure. So there's a couple of things. Of course, in places like the Netherlands, they have a community sort of governance approach where they have a council, a community council who are appointed through a sort of democratic process to support government. And when there's some complex decisions to be made, like some of those ones I discussed, that the members of that broader council, and they're across a spectrum of people in the community, can be brought in to be involved in that. But also there's the approach of nesting decisions further down into local government and into other community areas, bringing partners on board in in health governance decisions when complex decisions. If you look at COVID, if we were to bring some more of those businesses and partners in who are struggling to understand some of the decisions around COVID borders restrictions, if they can be brought along on the journey, and you can do that by implementing that principle where you need to include the principle in legislation that requires some communication with business. There's a host of ways.
Thank you.
Great, thanks, Jennifer.
Nice.
Thanks again to all of our shortlisted entrants for taking the time to engage with the competition. It's been great to hear all of your ideas, and we hope that it's also been valuable for you. The judges will now be deliberating on the presentations we heard and will soon announce the winner. In the meantime, we take this opportunity to share some more information about the PHAA and the SIF committee. One of our committee members, Ian, has prepared a short presentation, and we will hear from Ian now. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Maddie. I guess I'll just present a small presentation on the Public Health Association of Australia and a little bit on the Students and Young Professionals in Public Health Committee. So basically the mission for the PHAA is the leading national peak body for public health representation and advocacy. It's basically to drive better health outcomes through increased knowledge, better access and equity, evidence-informed policy, and effective population-based practice in public health. And so for the vision for a healthy population is that the PHAA has a vision for a healthy region, a healthy nation, healthy people living in an equitable society underpinned by a well-functioning ecosystem and healthy environment, improving and promoting health for all. So some of the PHA objectives are to advocate for reduction in health inequalities, encourage research and promote knowledge, provide a forum for exchange of views, promote and develop education of workers, promote, maintain and extend special interest groups, branches and affiliates, and promote excellence in public health practice. So some of the student membership benefits, if you are currently a student, especially, some of the benefits include early notification of PHA events and student member prices, access to student scholarships to the annual PHA conference, which is coming up very soon, the mentoring program, which is currently underway, student representative positions on the executive committee, lots of networking at PHAA, state and national events, and regular email updates of job vacancies. So just a little bit of the Students and Young Professionals in Public Health Committee. The purpose of the committee is to represent the interests of students and young professional members within the PHAA and to support and enhance the work of the PHAA. And so it was established in 2017 with two key aims, basically to ensure that the PHA can combine the knowledge of public health, policy and advocacy with the energy and enthusiasm of younger members through providing them with direction and clear actions, and to ensure that our future public health leaders are receiving the full support and direction of our association. So there's also been an early career student board position created earlier, and it would act as a gateway for students and young professionals to access the knowledge and direction of established public health leaders. And they would act as an advisory for and oversee the activities of students and young professionals at a national level, with close links to state branch students and young professional representatives. And it would provide opportunities for students and young professionals to further develop their skills and networks in public health and utilize their passion and energy. So in this sense, the PHA can combine their knowledge of public health policy and advocacy with the energy and enthusiasm of younger members through providing them with direction and clear actions, and will ensure that our future public health leaders are receiving the full support and direction of our association. And so there are a few committee objectives of the students and young professionals in public health. And one is to develop ideas as to how PHAA can continue to effectively engage students and young professionals. And so under the chair of the early career professional board member, the committee will discuss and develop ideas as to how the PHAA can continue to effectively engage students and early career professionals through the development of students and young professional opportunities through the PHAA, recruitment of PHAA student members and young professional members, and exploration and of support for interdisciplinary networking of public health students and early career professionals. And secondly, to develop and deliver activities and opportunities for students and young professionals. So by doing that, the Students and Young Professionals in Public Health Committee continues to build a PHA membership and develop the activities through the following mechanisms, such as collaborating with the PHA staff, the PHA board, the students and young professionals members, and other public health student groups on the development of student-related activities, and working on the student representative or as the PHAA conference committees, providing suggestions to related involvement through the various conferences, and assisting in the planning and promotion of SYPPH conference activities and events. And finally, basically, to serve students and young professional members of the PHAA through implementing initiatives led by students and young professionals and communications relevant to the students and young professionals in public health through various mediums such as InTouch, e-bulletins, the PHA website, and of course, through social media. So I guess there are many initiatives and activities that are currently happening through the students and young professionals in public health. And so, for example, you've got the directory of students and young professionals in public health opportunities, where they are listed, for example, volunteer opportunities, internships, events, etc. You get the opportunity to look at those. And there's also a section on the website, a little bit about more on the committee and the objectives. So you can find that on the PHA website. And as some of you may know, there's a national mentoring program that happens annually. And the committee are currently in the process of doing this mentoring program. So far, it's been quite successful and allows for members to be paired with a number of established public health professionals. And also many networking opportunities, the think tank competition, as you know, and also a number of communications. So just through the mentoring program, these are just a couple of quotes from experiences such as, I would have never had the courage to approach a mentor such as mine without this process. And so in 2020, we received a total of 118 applications to the program, which is over double the amount received in 2019. And so we had 13 mentors from 2019 offered to re-mentor again this year and received 10 new mentor applications and proactively approached 3 mentors who then agreed to participate in the program. And I guess, as you know, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the SYPPH was unable to implement a longer program in 2020, but nevertheless, it's still going ahead, and so far it's going well. And so we are currently in the process of organizing a number of online events for 2020, hopefully, and for 2021, and to facilitate that engagement with a number of students and young early career professionals who are tuning in this evening. And so there are a number of networking opportunities. And I guess prior to 2019, the Australian Public Health Conference, the SYPPH hosted a networking night, bringing together 50 public health students and professionals comprising of 7 speakers and facilitators and 43 participants. So hopefully there'll be another opportunity online with the national conference happening later this year. And as you know, the think tank was initiated in 2018 to encourage student engagement with the PHA and to encourage innovation and critical thinking from the next generation of public health professionals. And in 2019, last year, 4 entries were selected and published by Croaky Health Media. And so they can see there's a image of the winner from last year, Kathleen McFadden, who presented Aging in Place, 2 new initiatives could make it safer and better at the National Public Health Conference. So if you would like more information, do contact a number of the members who are from all over the state, as you can see, from all over the country rather. So Jen Lacey-Nichols, co-chair from Victoria, Amy Brownbill from South Australia, Alexander Proctor from South Australia, Cecilia Lee from New South Wales, Chantel Vella also from New South Wales, Madeline Forbes from Queensland, and Siddharth Kaladharan from Queensland, and also the other members, Anud Mata, Carmen Vargas, Natasha Reid, and Nicole Gonzaga. So that's a little bit on the SYPPH committee and our connection with the PHA. And I'll give it back to Maddie.
Thanks, Ian. We're very pleased to offer these initiatives, and we give thanks again to the Public Health Association for supporting our efforts. So we should be ready to announce our winner, and our winner from today will go on to present at the Australian Public Health Conference in October, and will receive financial support to cover their registration. As well, all our shortlisted entrants who presented today will receive a 1-year student membership to the Public Health Association and to Croaky Media. I'm sure everyone is keen to hear the winner, so we might check in with our judges and see if they're ready to make the announcement. Terry, are you ready?
We are ready. Thank you, Madeline. Firstly, let me thank all 4 of the presenters. I mean, everybody who's sat through these presentations will appreciate that the challenge they face of getting across some pretty complex and I think big ideas in the space of 7 minutes in this kind of environment is an enormous challenge by itself. So congratulations to all four of you. I can tell you this is the 3rd time I've judged this competition, and it doesn't get any easier. And I can tell you that all of the judges have punched in their commentary that it's been a tough gig to make the assessments for the outcome of the competition. So everybody should be proud to get to this stage in the competition, to get to the final. So you should certainly all deserve a virtual round of applause, and I'm sure that everybody who's listening would throw in their recognition, and I'm sure there's a button I should be able to push to demonstrate applause. I certainly would wish to offer my own round of applause to all of you. I can tell you that all of the presentations scored well, and the scoring was pretty tight, and it came down to only a couple of points between first and second, so I have to make that clear. The ideas were fabulous, and all of them we'd like to see developed in some more real way. But it is my job to get off the fence and stop prevaricating, and so I'm delighted to announce that Jessica has been the winner in the presentation from James Cook University, and the focus on rural and regional Australia at the moment is highly justified and welcome. But all of the presentations touched on really key and important issues in public health. They all addressed really important fundamental underpinnings of our discipline, of our world, and so we're really thrilled and delighted by all of them. And each year I think the standard of this competition keeps on getting better, and so that goes to the work of the SIF group who put the competition together. Madeline and Jen and all of the people who've done the hard work behind the scenes to bring this together also deserve your recognition and a round of applause, and we're really thrilled by that. Now, I've got 60 seconds, so I just want to give you one little insight before we wind up, and that is some of the work of the SIF has been really important for PHAA. And I'll tell you one specific example that's come to light really recently, and that is SIF has taken, and you've heard from Ian about the mentoring program, and that's been a great innovation. And that was built on the work from the South Australian branch that developed some work on a mentoring program. Well, this year, as a result of COVID-19, and in particular the second wave that occurred in Victoria, a Victorian group got together, and over the space of less than a month, we created a mentoring program for the people working on the front line of COVID-19 in Victoria at DHHS. We've got 192 applications for mentees. We've already done one round of matching with the mentees and mentors. And as of this afternoon, I think we've got about 180 mentors who've put their hand up. So that's again that idea of bringing the resources together at the Public Health Association and the people in the public health workforce around the country to, public health folks looking after themselves. But that's been built on the work of the students and young professionals group and the effort they put into creating the structure for the mentor program. So it's something that was there for us to lift and learn from and draw upon to create something that was so important in this crisis time. I mean, public health has been under the pump like never before in this year of 2020. And so it's really gratifying for me as someone who's been around the field for a long time to see the extraordinary work of the young people coming up and filling that pipeline for the essential public health leadership we're going to need into the future. And so this program gives those young emerging leaders a chance to show their wares and to show where they're coming from. And it's a really encouraging and heartening experience for me, and I'm sure all our judges, Summer and Bram, would agree with that assessment. So folks, thank you very much and congratulations. Congratulations to all of the contestants or the contributors today, and particularly to you, Jess, and we look forward to you working on your presentation for the annual conference. If I had my way, I'd give all 4 of the contestants a free registration. Can't promise anything, but I'm going to bat for that and see if I can make a subsequent announcement for that. But I'll get in big trouble if I just unilaterally do it. So that's the way I'd like to see it unfold. Again, thanks to everybody to contribute. Thanks to Bram and for Summer for their work as Senior Public Health Association members for helping to judge in this competition. Congratulations to everybody involved, and thanks very much. And yes, a round of applause for all the contributors. Well done.
Thank you, and thanks to our judges also for joining us today. I don't know if, Jen, you have any more housekeeping things that you want to discuss before we log off? No? Okay, well, thanks everyone for joining, and we hope to see you at next year's competition.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.